Jo, how you doing?
Hi, I'm very good. How are you doing?
Nice to see you.
Nice
Thank you for coming in.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I understand that, like me, you've fallen in love with Nelson Mandela Bay. You're not from here originally.
No, I'm not from here. I'm from Pietermaritzburg originally. So I moved here probably, I don't know, probably in the beginning of 2021, but got here like during COVID at the end of 2020. And yeah, it was a tough transition during COVID, but now this place is like so deep in my heart. It's so special here. I love it. You know, all the ocean, well, all the water systems in the world are connected essentially. Like rivers run to oceans. It's just, you know, like how everything is so connected. So conserving the oceans really felt like a very, very natural way to go within my career. And also, like, a lot of work in freshwater, surprisingly, is more orientated towards engineering, and I'm more the people side of things. So working in ocean conservation not only is like what I studied and my interests, but I think it suits my personality, you know, like a bit more.
Well, I'm glad that it's brought you here, because you're now part of this community, a very important part of this community. And the organisation you represent, it's something that I've been aware of since I've been in the Bay. The Sustainable Seas Trust, of course, was founded in 2006 by a gentleman called Tony Ribbink. Quite an interesting character in himself. Can you tell me a little bit about how it came about and the rationale behind it?
Yeah, so like you said, founded in 2006. It was a small, a small trust in Kent-on-Sea. That's where it started, and it was all about ensuring marine sustainability and fighting poverty in coastal communities through education and like skills development. So that's kind of where SST came from, like the ideology of it. But the trust itself was born out of a program called the African Coelacanth Ecosystem Program.
I've heard of that. Coelacanth.
Yeah. So the coelacanth is a fish that we thought was extinct. They call it a living fossil because it's actually alive and it's in the Eastern Cape, and that's where they found it. And they thought it was completely extinct, and here it is, just living its life.
I couldn't believe some of the stats. Conservatively, they say that we, as the human race, we put over 10 million tons, 10 million tons, metric tons is the technical term, of plastic into our ocean annually. Now that's a conservative estimate. I saw up to 15 million tons as well in other thing. That is something that obviously is creating a huge problem. It's something that we're aware of. I know it's Tony Ribbink's mission in life. This is something he has taken on. I know it consumes a lot of what you do at SST. But I'm going to play devil's advocate here a minute, because I'm a historian, and I look back when plastic was created. Does anybody know when plastic was created? Well, apparently modern plastic has only been around since the early 1900s. The date they give is 1907.
Okay.
But plastic has transformed our life for the better, hasn't it? It's a remarkable material. It's cheap, it's pliable, it lasts, but there lies the problem, doesn't it?
You literally captured it perfectly. So all the things that make plastic great are also the things that make it terrible when it's in the wrong place. So it's lightweight, it's durable, it doesn't degrade. So these are great things because it changed the way like our supply chains work around the world. You can ship things further and you can keep them packaged in these materials that just last, right? So it's changed the way we consume and the way we live so much and made life way more convenient. But all those things are also the reason why plastic is so terrible, because when it's in the wrong place, essentially when it's in the marine environment or the land environment, then it's going to last forever. It's going to last until someone removes it, because plastic doesn't biodegrade. Plastic is derived from fossil fuels and from coal. So it's going to last, it doesn't degrade, so it lasts for hundreds of years when it's in the environment. And the thing with how terrible it is about, it doesn't just it's expensive to take out the environment. So once it's in the wrong place, once it's in the marine environment or on land or something, it's really expensive and time consuming to remove, you know, and it's a resource. It's like a fossil fuels based resource. So it has value. So you know what I mean? So all these factors all together, it makes it a really big problem. Plastic pollution itself is a big problem because of these things.
Why is it being focused so much on the ocean? I mean, it's the obvious one, isn't it? We've seen these horrific scenes of all this plastic, you know, absolutely. It seems like it's a sea of plastic almost in certain. I mean, I try to get onto off the beaten track beaches here in South Africa, and I don't think I've been on any beach where I haven't seen plastic pollution.
It's not
It can be a bottle, of course, it can be a container, but then if you look closer, you've got those what they call microplastic, isn't it? And and it's everywhere, and it's certainly along the sea line. You can see it.
100%.
Why do we focus on the sea as opposed to the land? Is it equally a problem?
It is equally a problem, but plastic also gets transported in different pathways, like rivers and through the wind. So essentially, so much of it ends up in the ocean just because it gets caught up in a riverway or stormwater drain or in the wind, and then it ends up in the ocean. So we focus on the marine environment because it's more difficult to get to. So because of that, it's more problematic, and because so much of it ends up being transported into the marine environment.
That's why. In terms of the graphics you can see. Now, what's the story behind this particular image?
Remember we were talking about like how plastic waste is such a big issue in the ocean. This is why. Look at this. This is a river that has a lot of plastic waste caught up in it because essentially it's a pathway to the ocean. So plastic, lightweight, gets caught up in the river and then just goes straight down that.
Okay, so and obviously it doesn't matter how far inland, as long as there's a waterway, it will get to the sea eventually. And
eventually, as long as it's connected, it'll get there. As long as it doesn't get caught up along the coast. Now you see, this is a estuary, so that often happens where you've got this estuary, it's going into the river. It's a river going into the ocean, and then you'll have a high tide event or like a swelling event, and then the waste will get stuck in sediments and layers on the side there. So like the rivers and the ocean, it's just where plastic gets caught up so easily.
But isn't that nature? I mean, look at this.
Yeah,
so this is where it originates. Of course, we've all seen places like this in South Africa, and it's easy for us in our nice environment, our nice suburbs, to say, why do people live like that? But at the end of the day, it's all about service provision, it's about education and those kind of things. But this ultimately could get into the ocean. This is what we're talking about.
100%.
So what is the answer, Jo? How do you deal with it at source when it comes to that?
So obviously better waste management systems are the thing that we need. But waste management itself is also a complicated thing because essentially at the end of the day, it's technically the municipality, local government's responsibility. But waste management is a very, across the board, we've done research. The waste management departments across Africa are incredibly underfunded. It's such like it's like a later thought when it comes to government and government spending and stuff like this. So although we would like to say, better waste management, municipalities do better, they're dealing with big countries with a lot of waste where they've got to go really far to collect all that waste, and they need a lot of money to do that. And most departments are super underfunded, so it's difficult for them to do that. So I think, honestly, one of the biggest things that we need more collaboration from the private sector and from business, or even from communities, where we can do waste management together and make it more efficient, because it's not efficient right now.
I mean, it's an expensive process, isn't it? I mean, it's just not an overnight fix. I wanted to ask, where does SST get their funding? You're a non-profit organisation, of course, but how many staff do you employ now?
We've got about 30 people.
About 30, so it's a significant organisation. Yeah. Where do they get their funding, and how much of that is an issue? And are you secure for years to come, hopefully?
Well, like most NGOs, or NPOs, we work on 3 to 5 year funding cycles. So we've been funded by the Norwegian government for the last 3 years, which is great. They're fantastic. But we're as an NPO, we're always looking for support. Whether it's financial support, volunteer, intellectual support, helping us prop up our network. We're always looking for ways that we can essentially do what we do it better. Because how you do stuff like this, like education, waste management, capacity building, is through good networks. It's through collaboration. These problems are too big for one entity alone to solve or to tackle. So it's so important to have a good network doing it. So if you'd like to help SST out,
there's your chance. Make your plea, please. Thank you.
Come join our network. Get in touch with us. See what opportunities are out there for us to collaborate and maximize our impact. That's what we really need.
And you've got a team of obviously you're more concerned with sort of the corporate relationships and network building. You've got a team of scientists as well. So you've got marine biologists. You've got people out there actually testing the ocean, seeing where we are at the moment in terms of the health of the environment.
Yeah, so we've got a very big research department. Our research department does a lot of monitoring to see what litter loads are like over the years and how that changes in terms of litter that's coming from the land and litter that's coming from the ocean. And what they've got a really cool project. They're basically working with 7 countries in the Western Indian Ocean, have harmonized a technique and made it super simple where anyone can monitor what litter is coming into the marine environment and into the coast. And the idea with that monitoring program is that when you've got enough data about this, the litter monitoring data, then you can start to know where to plug the problems and like how to implement solutions. So that's what one of the projects within our research team. The research team also is doing research about microplastics.
Tell me about microplastics. This is a term I've heard many times.
Yeah.
And it's a real problem, isn't it?
It's a real problem. Microplastics are a big problem. So let's give you an example to work with. Okay, so think of your gym clothes. You're right, your nice, quick dry gym clothes that when they get wet, they dry really quickly. A lot of the time, those are made with polyester fibers and treated plastic. So the plastic is woven down into something really nice and super smooth, but it's still plastic. It's just nanofibers of plastic. So they're super tiny. And then when you wash them, they get released into the water, right? So washing machines are just doing their little jobs and washing things, and then it releases microplastics. You get microplastics from little pieces of plastic breaking up into smaller pieces of plastic in the environment and just becoming smaller. So microplastics are basically what happens when some size plastic wears down. And microplastics can be so tiny. They've been found within breast milk. They've been found to be able to penetrate the brain. There was a study recently in Antarctica where they were looking down at some of the sediment layers in Antarctica. They found microplastics in Antarctica.
Wow.
So it's just everywhere, So this is also, again, just what makes it such a big issue.
Are you saying that we are part of our being? We are walking around. We've got plastic within our systems.
And we didn't ask for this plastic surgery. Yeah, this is what's happening. So it's entirely possible. The research is all still quite new. So a lot of the time when you get this research, like I said, about plastic being in breast milk or plastic going into the brain and things like that, it's new research. They're still trying to kind of understand the dynamics of it and how it's happened and stuff like that. But yeah, there's like very much a likelihood that we have plastic in our bodies. Did you ever watch a documentary about Teflon, about a company in America that was making Teflon? Teflon is that coating that makes pans not stick.
Yeah.
Teflon is a plastic-based product. I wouldn't call it plastic. It's like a rubberized plastic. They say that Teflon is almost like so prolific, it's in every part of the environment, but because it's what like all our non-stick stuff is made out of.
Wow.
So there's so many different applications of plastic or rubber and plastic derived products that it's very easy to understand why it's in everything. It's everywhere.
I mean, it's absolutely shocking to me. I didn't realise that my gym shirt was actually plastic. I mean, and when obviously, I mean, when you wash something and it comes into the water, that will go into the system, of course. I mean, the obvious thing is the fish ingest that, we eat the fish. I mean, that's the obvious thing. Yeah. But you're saying that there's even plastic in breast milk. I mean, that is quite horrific.
I can't remember where that study was.
But if that doesn't make people stop and think, nothing else will. I think sometimes you need to realise, how polluted our world is, and you don't often see it, is it? I mean, it's not just it's not the bottle on the beach necessarily that's the problem. It's the stuff you can't see.
Yeah, exactly.
How, if I can ask then, how do we actually remove? First of all, it's one thing removing plastic from the system, which we won't be able to do. Let's face it, it is everywhere. But how do we actually destroy it? I mean, in terms of there's recycling. I mean, the obvious way would be to burn it, but I understand that has issues as well.
It is, yeah. I mean, plastic isn't made to be burnt. It's obviously got a really, really high carbon footprint when you burn plastic. So our greenhouse gas emissions would probably just go through the roof with something like that. So I wouldn't recommend burning it. I think for me, one of the biggest things with plastic is, recycling is an option. It's a good option, but recycling isn't the only option. When it comes to treating plastic, there's other methods of using it to gain back some of its usefulness. It's a resource. So you can build roads with it. You can build housing, you can build bricks. There's many applications where you can use plastic to do different things that we really need. Africa is a country, as a continent where we're kind of lacking in infrastructure in many ways and housing for people. So you can apply plastic to those solutions too, and do something useful with it. I don't think destroying it is the best way to do it because it's still valuable. So if we're more efficient with capturing back that value, put it into construction, put it into roads. Roads degrade less when they're made out of plastic than butane.
Wow.
So there's things to do it that are more practical and more beneficial.
It's just a case of getting people's mindset to change, isn't it? And it comes down to cost again.
Yeah, it's expensive.
It's expensive.
Yeah.
I think we've got a few comments coming through, Gary.
Cool.
I mean, this is people are really responding to what we're saying tonight. Thank you, Grant. Grant does great work out there, of course, with his environmental work. Gino, well, you talk about energy. You've got the energy, guy. Just keep doing what you're doing. Thank you. Thanks, Craig. No, really looking forward to tonight's show. Why are we not able to buy a simple item like bananas without plastic? Now, this is something that...
100% it. Why? Well, plastic does help things to stay, like perishable things to stay fresh for longer. So plastic is helpful if you're transporting items like bananas really far. But if you're just buying bananas from your local shop who got it from the farmer who's like a couple of kilometers away, they shouldn't be in plastic. They have natural packaging. So that's a great point.
Again, what would you suggest, that they actually put a tax or put pricing on this? Is it because it's so cheap?
Yeah.
It's cheap.
It's cheap.
That's it. That's it. It comes down to price as well. Is Wayne, of course, are there any awareness campaigns for chocolate fishing industry regarding the effects of pollution?
Well, I mean, I think the effects of pollution, especially pollution from sea-based sources, is gaining a big amount of traction these days. Like SST, for example, has got a program where we monitor sea-based sources of waste and try to understand them a bit better. So that actually might be a good way to kind of like get some ideas about how there can be some prevention of pollution from sea-based sources of waste, including chocoboats. So I can always share some resources.
Please get in touch. And no, there's more than enough resources, and that's the important thing about the show. Always fighting litter and sewage. The Barkans Valley, of course. I mean, an absolutely beautiful part of our metro here, and again, it's just littered, isn't it?
Yeah.
With pollution.
Yeah.
There we go. Thank you,
Bruce. This is my old lecturer. Hi, Bruce.
Oh, really? Oh, really? You better be on form. Thank you, Bruce. We'll make sure that we say the right things as well. No, it's really important to bring this awareness through, and that's what you do. I mean, it's not just about going into schools; it's about communities as well. What your interactions, is that part of what SST do in terms of education? Education is so important, isn't it?
100%. So to answer your question and Bruce's question at the same time, what's so interesting is our education department. We have a great education department at SST. They've done research where they've monitored different interventions about awareness in schools. So they were looking at some grade 5, 6s and 7s over, I think, the last 2.5 years. And what they found out is, in order to get awareness really cemented and behavior changed in children, they need 4 interventions to make that impact happen. So 3 interventions, not quite enough. Children don't change their behavior, but for 4 interventions, children will change their behavior. So stuff like this is what we need to be doing more. Children need to know in school what the deal is with plastic and what the options are to be kinder to the environment, build that environmental connection. With adults, I feel like the tactic you need to make with adults is you have to make it really accessible, you have to make it easy to do, and you have to make it make sense in the life they're already living. I think the key to behavior change is to make sure people have the right amount of motivation and the right amount of ease to do something, because we're all busy, there's a lot of issues in the world, you can't care about everything, and you're just trying to out there live your life. So to make an intervention with adults easier, we have to make it accessible, we have to make it easy to do, and we have to have that little bit of right motivation at the right time. It
reminds me of my trip back to Slovakia now, recently. I was in a supermarket and people were queuing to this machine, and I wondered what it was, and what they were doing, they were carrying bags and bags of plastic bottles. They were feeding into this machine. A ticket would come out and they would go and get a refund at the till, or used for their groceries. And you could just see how that. I mean, obviously that took technology and whatever, but it's a mindset, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you kept that plastic, it's a culture, exactly that. I wanted to ask you about this idea that it's somebody else's problem. It's not, is it?
No.
You know, you said that SST has been kindly funded by the Norwegian government. They could have said, well, let's look after our own backyard, you know, the Norwegian Ocean, of course, a beautiful part of the world. But do they look at the fact that we share an ocean? We share, that all oceans are linked.
Exactly.
So if you pollute one part of the world, it's gonna actually come
end
out.
up on someone else's doorstep, you know. Waste is a transboundary issue. That's what we call it. Because once it's in the ocean, it's out there, you know, and it's like, doesn't matter if it was pollution that happened in Durban, that pollution that happened in Durban could end up in Madagascar, or it could end up, you know, up in Tanzania, or just in Cape Town, you know. It can end up anywhere. So taking, like again, that collaborative effort, that combined effort to take care of our world is so necessary, because it's too big. Like I said, it's just too big to tackle and to be like, oh no, we're just going to deal with our backyard. The issue is way too big. It's impacting us all. We need to like kind of come together.
And is there an issue with sort of food security as well in terms of this? I mean, does it impact at that level?
Well, I mean, so I don't know if you've heard that statistic that was going around about how, I think it's by 2030, there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish. Okay, sorry, don't quote me on the specifics of that quote. I should have written it down. But that's a statistic that's going around. Now, that statistic is interesting for two reasons. Because for one thing, it talks about overfishing, because there's going to be less fish in the ocean by 2030 because we're overfishing. And then it talks about the second issue, which is that we're putting so much plastic waste into the environment. So when you look at it from that perspective, more of the way that plastic degrades the environment and is a major pollutant, and it's harmful to animals, it kills animals. Like, you get so many animals that eat plastic by mistake, and then it ends up in their bellies. And like I said, because it doesn't degrade, the animal will think it's full, but it's not full, and it starves to death because it doesn't look for other food or something like that, or because the plastic will cut up its insides and stuff like that. So yeah, so plastic really can affect livestock, it can affect like wildlife, and it can degrade ecosystems. So
yeah, what's really interesting for me, for a sustainable seas trust, you have as much work on land, because at the end of the day, that's where it starts. I know people probably think that it's ship-based waste that causes it, but not at all. It's actually how that gets into the system, isn't it? Yeah. Now, you're a very positive lady. I've got to know you over the last week or so in terms of your outlook. You must despair sometimes when you look at the stats. You look at this amazing challenge that not only SST but other organisations face.
Yeah.
Have we got hope for the future? I know let's say we've got to have hope. What else have we? I often say at my talks, if we haven't got hope, what have we got? But if we continue, say for example, are there forecasts of what's going to happen in say the next 10 years? And can you see a trend where this is actually starting to be at least arrested or at least slowed down?
I would say yes. I would say, okay, no, but first up, let me be straight. I have big climate grief sometimes. I just get, like, I am a positive person, but I love nature and I love the environment. When I'm outside, like a lot of those photos I took of all the waste in the environment, and I get so sad when I see this. Like, I start picking up trash when I'm at the beach and I just can't stop myself.
Is this multi-layered waste?
This is multi-layered waste, Dean. So all the different layers you can see there. So that's happened at like tidal events and stuff like that. Or sorry, it's a riverine system. So that plastic has washed up there, and then there's been changes in the landscape, and then sediments have come over it, and then it's happened again. So you see like a perfect. It's almost
like a fossil, isn't it?
Exactly.
It shows how it's actually been preserved.
Yeah.
So how old would some of that plastic be in those layers?
I mean, that could be happening, let's say, over the last like 10 years or so, maybe a bit less. Yeah.
So it's not even what we see on the surface. It actually goes deep.
It's like it's down in sediments, especially in the riverine and the ocean systems. It gets like washed up, and then it gets sediments over it or like something, and then it just.
Come on, let's cheer ourselves up.
Okay.
Come on. Tell me some of your success stories. What have you really you thought, you've gone to bed at the end of the day and you thought, do you know what, we had a good day today. We actually saw a change.
Yeah.
And give us some
So let's get some
inspiration.
Okay,
Yes,
cool.
please.
So we're working on this really cool campaign at the moment, and it's with the tourism sector, and it's giving tourists, like businesses and establishments, the tools that they need to just create less plastic. So they can recycle, reuse, repurpose, rethink, or replace plastic items. And we're going to basically create this community, and we're test piling it here, we're test piling it in PE, where establishments can take collective action, and the action that they can take is in their establishment themselves to reduce the amount of plastic waste they generate as like a restaurant or a bed and breakfast or a hotel. And then that challenge will go out to tourists themselves who are staying in those places or visiting those places, and they will be in an environment where they can do the same. So this campaign is called We Are an NMB. It's a very cool campaign. We're signing up places to be part of it right now. So you can sign up for it if you're a hotel or restaurant or bed and breakfast or anything like that, or you take people out on tours. You can sign up to be part of it. And what we're doing is we're making a toolkit with everything you need to limit your plastic waste and limit the amount of plastic that you generate. And then next year, we're going to roll out this campaign and give you all the training, all the equipment, and all the problem solving that you need to roll out this campaign and make less plastic waste. And we're super excited about it.
Fantastic. So we can see things happening as well.
Yes, there is positive action. We just had the Global Plastics Treaty where a whole bunch of countries all over the world, it was in Uruguay, I think, last week, and a whole bunch of countries in the world like basically made commitments to end plastic waste in different ways. So there is positive action happening.
So when Tony founded this wonderful organisation back in 2006, we have made progress since then.
Yes.
But he didn't focus on plastic specifically. There were other things. And what else do you do as well, by the way? It's not just
plastics, no. So we do, like I said, a lot of marine education. So building that environmental connection is important with children and with young adults, not because just of plastic, but just because people often don't understand why the environment or why nature is important because they haven't had enough interaction with it. So any kind of marine or ocean conservation, marine or land-based conservation is important. But the first step to that is to people having a relationship with the environment. So we do a lot of education. We also create a lot of toolkits that can help teachers to do ocean conservation awareness and to build it into their curriculum. We have a great resource online called the African Waste Academy, where we've uploaded a lot of information there that's basically like plug and play, that teachers can fit it into their curriculum and then apply it. So that's really cool. And then we also build networks. So we have a department that's dedicated and a mapping system that's dedicated into basically supplying useful content and to like sharing information and connecting all the different people who are working in ocean conservation around Africa. So it's a really huge undertaking, but it's so built into what we do as an organization and our like vision of like co-creating a network of active communities and like organizations and researchers and people and places. So we've got this project in Motherwell with a community hub actually that we've been working with. Motherwell's in the northern part of Port Elizabeth. It's a community around there. It's a big community. And we've been working with this hub since 2020, like us and a whole bunch of other people. And basically this hub has grown from being a couple of containers where some ladies were working in to recycle waste as a buyback center into this off-the-grid blossoming hub where waste is used for building materials, like aesthetically as well as a little bit inside. And this hub is educating children around the community in Motherwell. And we're in the stages now of trying to help them like basically amplify the work that they're doing and do it on a little bit of a bigger scale. So yeah, we are seeing some progress. It's slow, but it's nice.
Should suppliers not be expected to be more proactive in reclaiming waste?
Yeah, that's what extended producer responsibility is all about. That it's about suppliers, the people who generate the waste, who make the products, who put them on the market, basically paying into the pot so that their products can be claimed back fairly or designed differently so that there's less waste in the environment. That's what it's about.
Thank you, Bridget.
Thanks, Bridget.
It's again, it comes back to this two things: education and money. At the end of the day, isn't it?
100%.
Isn't it? So I mean, all I can say is you're an absolute. There's a link that Gino's included there. Thank you, Gino. You're an inspiration, and your colleagues at SSTR, and I know it's an organisation I've been aware of since I came here. So I'm glad we've got round to that. And then please, if anybody out there can help, or have got any good ideas, of course, please do get in touch. And what are you going to be doing for the holidays? Are you staying around? Are you going to be swimming in the ocean? That's
100%. I can't wait until I'm free to just be a beach bum. So, you know, Dean, when I was looking at photos, looking for my photos to show you about like the travel and what I've done before, I struggled to find photos that weren't of me at the beach, often with a beer in hand. So I'm like, that's not really like the identity I want to be putting out there. But yeah, definitely at the beach. I'm going to go up to Kenton-on-Sea, and I think just travel. Like, I don't know the Eastern Cape as well as I'd like to, so I'm going to travel around and check out some of the cool
you must enjoy our region. It's absolutely stunning. I think I think we are privileged, and we're looking forward to just staying put. Everybody takes off. This is the place where people come to. So we actually live in one of the most beautiful parts of South Africa, if not the world, actually. So thank you, Gino. Living up to your expectations there. Thank you. Brilliant. So listen, ladies and gentlemen, I'd just like to say I'm sure Joe would agree with me here. Thank you so much for your input tonight. It's been a pleasure presenting this again, and we look forward to bringing another show in the new year. So whatever you do, have a happy holidays, be safe, but enjoy our natural world, which is the most important thing. And I look forward to seeing you in 2023.